So first of all, welcome, bem-vindos. This is a webinar, workshop, conversation organized by Sojern in partnership with the Portuguese Travel Tech Community. Sojern for the last month, 2 months, I think, we have been working with them in order to especially because of this next normal that resulted with the COVID-19. We have been working with them in order to get some data, some important data, especially for not only for travel startups but for travel companies. And as a result, we've decided to organize this conversation, this webinar, in order to look for the answer how travel companies can prepare for recovery. So first of all, Richard, thank you so much for accepting this challenge. Thank you so much for sharing the knowledge. Just like Richard said, please, if you have any questions, use the chat. The chat, and you can ask your questions during the conversation, and at the end of the conversation, at the end of Richard's presentation, we can then go to the chat and ask all your questions to Richard. So again, Richard, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and thank you so much for your availability. And also, it's also important to say thank you so much for all the people that joined this conversation. Without further ado, Richard, it's up to you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. And I think, I hope that everyone's obviously very well, healthy, fit, and at least managing still with the gradual transition from homework to probably some of you, I'm sure, probably going back to offices already at your offices. Obviously, as Francisco says, we'd love this to be as interactive as possible. Really, what I want to do today is just give you a bit of insights from Sojern's point of view in terms of how we see things, specifically looking at Portugal as a market, and obviously looking at trying to identify, I suppose, ways that we can recover from this from COVID-19, something that has really impacted the travel and tourism industry significantly since March. And obviously here what we want to do is we hope that you'll come away at least with some ideas, and certainly hopefully open up some potential opportunities as well, where maybe we can support you, and where we hope that our take and the visibility that we can offer will be helpful for helping you plan and strategize your future actions. Just quickly about myself. So I've been working now at Sojern for just over 2 years. So I'm responsible for all kind of commercial and partnership developments in Spain and Portugal. I would say I'm relatively new to travel. To be honest, my previous experience has been much more focused on the ad tech and martech industries, but certainly sufficient experience as well to understand and be able to identify opportunities of working together. Now, let me quickly just give you a quick introduction into what Sojern does. Now, many of you may have heard of us, others probably not. We are fairly new in Portugal in terms of our presence, but we are a company that have been operational now for over 12 years. We basically, our focus is on identifying travelers based on their travel intent, so based on their online behaviors. And then we use basically digital marketing technologies and machine learning to be able to understand more about them, but also then influence them to learn more about your specific product, destination, or service that you might be offering. So obviously by being able to identify these potential tourists in real time, we have the ability to influence these travels to obviously learn more about your specific company. And it's not obviously it's not very easy to influence a traveler. How we do it is actually by running very personalized digital advertising campaigns to basically enable us to reach the right traveler at the right time with the right message. And although actually it may sound fairly new to some of you, as I say, we have been in the industry for over 12 years now. We work with over 10,000 global clients, and they range from hotel groups to OTAs, airlines, meta search companies, car rentals, mobility, any service that can potentially support the travel and tourism industry. And obviously with those, the DMOs or destinations are a large part of that. So we actually have solutions that can help both larger enterprise accounts, or in this case as well, smaller independent hotels and obviously businesses as well. So let's look at quickly how we do that. So really, I think one of our key differentiators is that we help travel and tourism related companies understand what travelers are doing online, and obviously get a much deeper understanding of what we call the path to purchase. So really being able to impact them wherever they are during that cycle, whether they're in the dreaming phase or whether they're already in the planning or potentially already in destination. So we do this, as I mentioned before, by actually combining technology with travel data, which we obtain from our over 100 strategic data partners, which we have operating across the globe. So this gives us a very quite a significant bird's eye view, if you like, of what travelers are doing. So we know when they're in that dream phase, all the way to when they've actually booked that trip and they're already in the destination. You know, we're able to understand how long they're going to be in destination for, and at the same time being able to really serve them something much more personalized. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about data today. I think data, it's no longer is it really a buzzword, because if you don't know what to do with data, it can become a very complex situation you're in. Now, at Sojern, basically data helps us eliminate the educated guess. Now, what exactly do we mean by this? That we're actually approaching, and this is not just based on our studies of understanding what those behaviors look like. This is very evident across any industry. We're approaching an era where there's no longer, you don't really need to rely on historical data anymore to make critical business decisions. We're in the era really of where real-time data can help and support marketers, whether it is a travel industry or not, but actually make much more precise decisions that are based on testing and learning rather than just historical trends. But how you're probably thinking, well, how does Sojern actually use this data? Well, we use the data to provide travel insights, which are basically reports that help you analyze current travel trends to your destination or hotel or whatever service it may be. We then look at real-time travel searches and bookings to help better understand and obviously plan for more effective campaign strategies. Secondly, we use data to run data-driven marketing campaigns. So we help any company, whether it's small or enterprise, within the travel and tourism space, to reach in real time travelers that are searching or booking to travel to a given location. For example, those who are searching to travel to, for example, Portugal or competing destinations, but also audience segments such as frequent travelers, family travelers, weekenders, and so on and so forth. And lastly, we use data travel to provide campaign analytics and measure the economic impact of your campaign. So this is very specific to destinations, but the idea here is that we can help support you understand and track how those campaigns are performing, and obviously use that information as well to better optimize your specific campaigns. So now quickly, after the introduction, obviously, what I wanted to look at now is do a little bit of a deep dive into specifically Portugal, so looking at the latest travel trends. Now, obviously, while nobody can actually anticipate the full impact of these exceptional circumstances that we've been facing, we have been committed since March to conducting research that provides obviously trustworthy information, but also insights for all travel professionals, so whether they're clients or not. Here, what we want to do is really help you understand what the short and long-term trends are that we're seeing, share ideas for how you can manage, obviously, through these very challenging times, but at the same time, set you up for a much stronger possible business recovery. So let's dive into the recent trends we are seeing for this week and last. Now, this was actually shared last week through our Sojern LinkedIn page. What we've certainly see is Portugal is growing, if you like, as a summer destination, both for locals, domestic travel, and Europeans alike. We'll talk a bit more about what that recovery phase looks like further on. While the country, obviously, when we're talking here, Portugal, never went into really full lockdown. I think Portugal were very quick to learn from the mistakes of Spain and other markets. Obviously, beaches, we began to see that they started a gradual reopening of sites, obviously that has helped manage the spread of the virus. So we've seen most recently Portuguese beaches have begun kind of reopening to the public. Hotels are reopening. Services, complementary services that are supporting that have also began to get back to business. Obviously, we're not at full capacity yet, but we've seen very, very strong results there. Now, this obviously, in addition to very proactive campaigns that Visit Portugal has done to welcome local and regional travel, obviously has led to actually a very significant increase in travel intent. So, despite that, we still see around a 30%. We're kind of 30% down year on year. Flight searches have significantly gone up when we compare it to March and April. Now, looking at this, when we actually then look at actual bookings, we can see that Europeans are already booking for this summer. So looking at July and August specifically, and then we see a quite an interesting acceleration of year-on-year bookings towards the end of the year, where actually bookings are up and over 250% year-on-year for April 2021. So here, this is definitely looking ahead, and this is part of the value of the data that we have, is that we can do these predictions. Just bear in mind that obviously this data can change and will change from one week to the next, because it is real time. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that are affecting those changes. Looking at the travel searches, this is again we indexed the below graph, as you can see here, to the first week in April. So we took this simply as a point of reference. Now, this is the reason we did this is when Europe was perhaps at the worst phase of the virus. So lockdowns were very strict. Travel intent was at its very lowest. And this actually, we thought this was a good date to be able to help us see the recovery and where it was actually coming from. So when we look at where the interest in travel to Portugal is coming from, we can see that there is a clear interest for domestic travel from the Portuguese people themselves, with demand up 300% from early April. Now, when we start looking at other markets, Germany is also showing an incredible growth in terms of travel intent, so over 380% from the same period. UK as well is showing actually a very interesting increase in travel intent to Portugal, up 120% from early April. Now, UK has always been quite an important market for Portugal, so this is very positive to see that growth. There's actually been some talk as well about air bridges between Portugal and the UK for the summer holidays. Now, we have to keep a close eye on this. We don't know if and when this is going to happen, but certainly this is going to impact the arrivals that are going to be coming in. As I say, nothing has been confirmed yet. We just have to keep on track of this. Now, this slide actually then looks at domestic travel specifically. We see that domestic travel demand has actually increased dramatically, as mentioned before, with most of hotel searchers, Meta and OTA, looking to actually stay for June and also July. We'll see a little bit further on some additional information that supports this this fact. Now, again, looking historically, when we compare Portugal to its closest neighbor, and I think Spain has a lot of similarities in terms of offering and types of market, not as large, maybe not as varied, but certainly quite similar. We can see that actually June and July searches made specifically for hotels. So this is either via direct hotel sites as well as through OTA and meta search websites. In the last 2 weeks has obviously has increased. So these are real-time figures. So it may, as I mentioned, it may very well vary as Spain moves out of phase 3 and other similar destinations begin to open up. But we will keep track of this as we do on a weekly basis, and as I mentioned, we're more than happy to share this with you as well. Now, this side simply tells us that overall, the week-over-week change from international feeder markets is growing significantly. So this can be very useful to help us understand where new demand and opportunities are coming from, but also adapt the message, offer, and call to action, regardless of whether you are a hotel or a destination or a rent-a-car or a company that's supporting the travel or the DMO directly. And when the time is right to obviously then reactivate your digital marketing campaigns, if that is something that you're planning to do, these insights can further reiterate the importance of having to adopt actually what we refer to as an always-on strategy. I'll talk to a bit more about that further on. Looking at this slide, when we compared to last year, there's actually now only 30% less flight searches from Europe to Portugal. So looking at the key European markets here. So this is a closest level, if you like, to normal or the new normal, if you like to refer to it as that we can see since the start of the pandemic. But as I say, overall, I think very positive signs across the board. This is again very similar to the previous one, but what we've done is actually honed in specifically at Lisbon and Faro. Now we can offer very granular information to this extent. In some cases, it can be a little bit more complex to create, but I think it's a very similar story to what we're seeing in Lisbon and Faro specifically, as probably the largest or most significant tourist destinations in Portugal. Now, looking at this slide, we're looking at flight searches made this time last year. So we're actually seeing practically the same amount of searches to fly to Portugal for July. And then again, we see something very similar trends when we look again at Lisbon and Faro. This slide, before we then go into preparing for actually the recovery and giving you a bit more information on some of our recommendations here, this slide again actually looks more at travel dates from, as you can see, from Europe. We see that for countries such as Belgium, France, Germany, Switzerland, even the Netherlands, we're seeing significantly more searches for Portugal over the next few months compared to this time last year. So this is, I think, a combination of probably a number of factors, but I think one of the ones that probably has caused or has had the greatest impact is the very effective message that Portugal has given in terms of how they've dealt with the whole pandemic, but at the same time, that creating that sense of reassurance and safety for travelers coming in here. Portugal is appearing actually on I think still top 3 in terms of safest places to travel to. So I think we're very confident that has paved the way for a quicker recovery than most other European markets. So now looking at the recovery side, I wanted to give you just some practical tips now on how to succeed really in a quick recovery. Now, it's important to point out this doesn't necessarily refer to everyone. It's quite difficult to make this specifically relevant for every single sector because it is going to vary. But obviously, what I wanted to do today is to ensure that we at least have the right mindset to really navigate through the crisis, make sure we're all really doing everything we can to prepare. And obviously, these recommendations, I hope, will obviously be useful as well. Now, I wanted to start off just showing you actually this framework that our friends from the Digital Tourism think tank put together. They say, and it's actually something that we have also been working with some of our strategic partners on, that it's going to come really in 5 phases of recovery. So first, and you'll see that actually these will resonate and I'm sure will sound very familiar, as we've already been seeing some of these occur in Portugal itself. So first, there is what they're referring to as kind of remote travel, which is what we're experiencing really right now in a lot of destinations. Many of these destinations have actually done a very good job at bringing their destinations into people's homes. So, bringing that destination through videos, through workshops, through kind of fun, interactive means, and obviously using social media channels and virtual content as a way of channeling that information. And really the objective of this is to kind of stay top of mind. And then we kind of move then into this hyper-local phase where people want to kind of re-experience and rediscover their own cities. So without having to go anywhere, and I think also due to the restrictions in all of these markets, this has been inevitable. And now as the lockdown starts to ease, there will be those who will probably be ready to re-explore, again, more local environments, so not just cities, but slowly open up. And then we also have the staycation phase. These are already a thing before COVID-19. It's not something new, but we agree that obviously domestic travel is going to be the first thing that will recover first. Then they say people will actually cautiously start traveling closer to home. Now, this doesn't mean that it's going to be just within the neighboring countries or drive markets, so markets where people can get in their car and drive to, but close to home for example, UK travelers might be far away as long as they feel safe, as long as that perception of security is there. Whereas for other countries like Spain, it's going to be neighboring countries, Portugal and France in this case. So we shouldn't be misled from closer to home being only the countries obviously bordering Portugal. And then we have the new normal will obviously come when everyone understands that the rules and the ways that we travel are going to be quite different, and that travel will actually probably will never be the same as it was before. So I also wanted to clarify that actually these stages don't necessarily happen in order. There may be people who, as soon as they're able to travel, they'll go ahead into the new normal. So they'll jump phases directly. And this is obviously going to be very evident for younger generations, millennials as well. Or there will be those who will not be interested in traveling even when it's safe to do so. So I think these are just 2 considerations to bear in mind. Now, I mentioned to you before briefly around an always-on strategy. So obviously in these times more than ever, data is and the way that we can segment our audiences means that you're not having to spend marketing budgets without basing it on fact, without using data to help you identify the right targets and obviously then serve these messages. So for example, at this moment in time, you might want to, as a company, you might want to focus on the percentage of, for example, searches that we're seeing in market, so with a very close emphasis on domestic. And we refer to these as first movers, as you can see there on the slide. And they're the ones who are still actively searching for a trip and may want to, those are the people that you may want to put your brand in front of. There's also only a small portion. You will need to identify the dreamers. Now, these are a little bit tougher because they they may very well be dreaming about their next trip, but they're not currently searching. So they don't have a specific date in mind. So some ideas to help identify these can be to look at different behaviors, either those that were frequent, if you like, frequent travelers before COVID, or that had previously purchased your product or service. Obviously, they're going to be there's going to be a higher chance that they will come back into market and want to use your product or visit your hotel or destination. Another audience can be experience seekers. Now, those who they may not be, again, actively searching for a trip. However, they're looking for more local experiences. They're looking for something off the beaten track, something that's a little bit different. This can be things like people interested in gastronomy and adventures, more, cultural tourism, etc. And then finally, you've got the bookers. So these are people that you want to you really want to support your commercial partners on reaching the bookers as soon as they're ready to book, because they're the ones that are going to help that recovery sooner. So as you can see, consumers are obviously, first of all, they're very complex. They were very complex before COVID-19, and now during and post-COVID, they will be even more complex than before. So it's important to really find different ways to stimulate them, and in order to stimulate them, we'll need to move from doing what we, and I'm sure you've heard of, as mass marketing to mass personalization. So right now, if you're looking to spend on any marketing budgets, you need to certainly focus on consumers that can make a difference, but obviously personalize the content in order to make that tone and climate more relevant. Now, this, as I say, I won't spend much time on this, but this is more around the interpretation of what we say always on. Always on does not really refer to you having to spend continuously and large amounts throughout the year. It just means really the kind of really demystifying some of these common misinterpretations of what always on marketing is. So obviously we know that, for example, any travel brand could fully move into an always-on advertising, but at least using real-time data and technology to help you optimize your campaigns when you are active is certainly a big step forward to ensuring you're putting your customers at the center of your activity, and obviously based on data-driven results rather than relying on these assumptions that we talked about. So now I want to quickly now go into a bit more detail around what we've been supporting a lot of our clients on as part of this recovery phase. So, due to the uncertainty surrounding this and the impact it's had obviously on our industry, there was kind of a resounding need across our European region, specifically for prospects and clients, on two things. So they were asking us first and foremost advice on what they should be doing from a marketing perspective in order to handle the crisis and prepare for recovery. And secondly, deeper travel insights specific to their country. So as you know, for this specific webinar, Francisco and I decided to focus a lot more on specifically on business diversification and revenue streams. But as you can see here, we've created a number of battle plans focusing on what we considered probably the 6 most important areas of recovery. So, depending on demand and depending on interest, we can certainly set up another webinar and cover some of these other topics. So for this one, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at business diversification and revenue streams. Now, again, it's been very difficult to tailor make this content without really knowing who the attendees on the webinar were. So these are just some ideas that we felt kind of made sense to mention, and which I hope are actually going to help with giving you a broader idea of things that can be done in order to help your company, in order to also consider ways that you can diversify without necessarily moving away from your core service or activity. Why? Well, because we're in a situation where we have to, in a way, not completely reinvent ourselves, but I think where we need to think broader, diversify a little bit how we operate, and obviously adapt ourselves to that. What's been very interesting is a lot of smaller companies, for example, in Spain, in Portugal, in a number of other markets, they have not had a choice but to digitalize their companies much quicker than they anticipated. Now, I can't remember exactly where I read this article, but it did say that companies have advanced their digitalization by almost 6 years as a result of COVID. So actually very interesting to see that now businesses have had to step up and meet the requirements and fulfill some of these protocols, because otherwise they're simply not going to survive. So first is I wanted to look at one of the areas, and this is obviously very specific to hotels, whether they're independent, boutique, or larger groups. It's more around kind of repurposing your hotel. While obviously there may not be as many travelers booking hotel rooms, for example, for leisure travel, let alone business, that is an area that is still going to need some time to recover. Obviously, essential travel or to kind of separate themselves from vulnerable family members. This has actually been a very interesting approach from some of these hotels. They've, if you are a hotelier, one area is you can consider converting your hotel room into multi-purpose areas. So, even such as quarantine units or workspaces. Very recently, we saw an example of where a Swedish hotel group decided to actually open their hotel rooms as small pop-up restaurants. So actually very good, very intimate. You can go there, probably it's just a very small, secluded group of people, and you're going to be kind of dining in a very personalized and safe environment. So things like create room packages to attract paying customers, for example, who want or maybe need to quarantine themselves. So, we've seen cases of some hotel groups in Spain opening up, for example, their hotels to health workers. I think this has been a very common practice. But actually opening up to people who need this. This can include, for example, promoting a 14-day stay package. So you can include free or discounted kind of Wi-Fi, hotel services, complimentary services like laundry, hand sanitizers, movie packages, etc. Alternatively, some guests may need, as I mentioned before, actually a workspace. So they can't potentially do their work at home because they may have distractions, they may have kids. I think we're all very similar or have been in that situation. But obviously emphasis on desk areas, for example, and in-room coffee machines. These provide a few kind of office supplies. Really, it's all about complementing that service as a way of utilizing the hotels as a workspace. We then, as I mentioned very briefly, helping what we refer to as frontliners here. So hotels around the world have been housing doctors and nurses and emergency personnel, obviously those who are fighting front on the whole pandemic. So many health workers are visiting from kind of other regions or countries as volunteers and obviously need a place to stay. So some professionals probably don't have the ability to work remotely, and so need to continue working in a close contact with the community. So, this is another, again, very focused on hotels, but here's how you can offer really your services. So more around working with local city councils, create support packages. So even loyalty perks or donating points to charitable organizations, using larger rooms or event spaces to house patients. Now this is a much riskier, obviously, diversification strategy, but obviously hotels near hospitals that are somewhat overwhelmed. Offer laundry services, for example, to staff who may need to clean their hospital scrubs and bedding. Consider offering Heroes Hour. This is something that has happened across the globe where, for example, doctors, nurses, and even emergency personnel can receive a free discount on, for example, on meals. Talking of meals, another area is more around food catering and delivery. So obviously this is whereby you can actually, if your business has a restaurant, you can make use of the kitchen and facilities to facilitate menus for customers. Obviously, this goes protocols that a lot of these hotels and restaurants have to adhere by. But obviously, you can then communicate this effectively through your own website, through your own blogs or social media pages to highlight exactly what your offerings are. So the idea here is to, again, continue creating peace of mind, but ensuring and providing a very positive message about your company and your services. The gift cards is another useful way that a lot of companies is being able to kind of reinvent themselves. So promoting these gift cards can be actually a very good way to both benefit future customers and also use a kind of gesture of goodwill through the current situation. So by offering these gift cards, you can actually redeem these at a later date. This would apply to everything, not just hotels, but what it's going to do is it's going to encourage customers to book with you or reserve a ticket or a hotel room for your specific experience, a tour, whether you're a museum as well, which they can then use within the next year in return for a lower price. So here you're simply incentivizing people. So also collaborating with local businesses to make an experience package. So for example, stay 2 nights for a promotional price and receive 1 restaurant gift card and 1 for a museum. This could be good, also applicable for tours. And again, using gift card as a way for actually local communities to give back to frontliners, as we mentioned before. Another recommendation is obviously around going virtual. Now, this does incur a cost. It's not always an easy thing to do, but certainly your business can use technology to connect with customers in new ways. So both in person and obviously online. And some ideas that can actually show you how tech can support this. So in person, for example, you can actually use technology to promote social distancing, utilize, for example, an online or kiosk check-in to limit the contact that customers are having with staff. When we talk about online, we can even create self-guided virtual tours of your attraction, your service, your hotel, your restaurant. So again, for example, a guided tour, for example, catering to nature lovers or people interested in gastronomy. You can actually give them a one-on-one online session where they can actually see the product, and obviously it's not the same as being there, but it's another way of doing that. You can also provide kind of itineraries or audio tours. So think about future streams of revenue like online gift shop merchandise. This is another consideration. So these are all actually, I think, quite creative ways to maintain revenue streams that both promote social distancing, but at the same time appeal to cautious travelers looking for, if you like, an escape from being, certainly quarantined indoors. I think another thing which a lot of companies probably haven't paid too much attention to, I think, is using this time that we've had to actually train staff on new processes, policies that are being put in place, ensuring that they have the resources necessary to carry out their tasks in a safe and adequate way. If you're short on staff, for example, due to illness or furlough, then ensure each worker is prepared to take on, obviously, that additional responsibility. So additionally, you've got, for example, you can seek hotel and attraction guidelines on even health policies and processes for caring for quarantine guests. So this is another area I think is going to be important, not just now, but probably for at least for the next 6 months as well. And then here, this slide, thinking a little bit outside the box, this is more focused at kind of really coming up with new ways to use your own resources or to serve guests. So, for example, businesses that serve alcohols have actually begun shifting from distilling alcohol to, for example, hand sanitizers. When business picks up, picks back up, you can actually provide historical or cultural or language overviews of your specific region. So this is actually a good way to help introduce the area to travelers that have never visited, or help acclimatize them to any new cultures. So if your attraction, for example, is if you work in a service that is predominantly outdoors and very easily accessible, so you may have, for example, trips to see the vineyards or to see the port houses. You can actually allow customers to do this trip even in their cars instead of having to walk through the fields or walk through the bodegas themselves. And then lastly, in terms of these recovery ideas, while these have certainly been very, very hard times for all of us, I think we have to still see this as an opportunity to demonstrate the true spirit of hospitality, as only you know how to do that. Portugal has always been, I think, a market that has been very hospitable, very open and welcoming. And I think by focusing on what's happening in your local community and in your city, in your region, I think will obviously help contribute wherever you can in terms of influencing those guests and hopefully having them as repeated guests for the future. Now, I wanted to say that as well as obviously the battle cards and as well as the consultative support that we're offering travel professionals in Portugal, we have also launched a few promotional packages to really help jumpstart and also incentivize, obviously, companies to collaborate with Sojern. So I wanted just to quickly highlight some of these because they may well be relevant for when the time is right for you and your business to consider reactivating your digital marketing. And I think one of these is we're providing added value for incentivizing these clients. So actually being able to offer, for every euro invested, Sojern is willing to include an additional 50 cents as part of that investment. So there are some criteria that need to be fulfilled, but to be honest, the idea here is that we want to help support that reactivation. And I think this is certainly one way of doing that without obviously it affecting completely our bottom line as a company. We also have more focus at, for example, tours, attractions, and smaller independent hotels. We have a 50% off subscription packages. So the good thing about this is it is for the next 3 months, and it does give you some considerable flexibility on those prices. And at the same time, the guarantee that it will be not just for short term, but a full quarter in terms of duration. Some of you may be aware of this. We have recently been advertising this through our LinkedIn channels, but obviously the majority of independent hotels don't have, for example, dedicated website management teams to continuously optimize their websites and offers as a way of better engaging with travelers and obviously increasing conversion. So in addition, they've had very low booking volumes and pixel activity due to very poor quality websites. So in order to help both increase sales and obviously help your business if you are a hotelier with retaining existing customers, we actually have just reached a partnership with a hotel network where we can actually, this applies to both new and existing commission plan customers of Sojern, where we'll offer exclusive promotions where they can get basically a free trial of the hotel network's website optimization tools. And this is applicable up until the end of August. We then are also offering creative services. So this is actually for all large and small size businesses where maybe they have previously had to outsource a lot of their creative build. Here, what we want to do is be able to support you with that. And you can see there in terms of some of the conditions and the requirements. I still think is actually very, very appealing and a good way of us being able to support you kind of full circle. So more on a 360-degree partnership level. And that is it. I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time again. I'm not sure if there are any questions at all. Have any come through the chat, Francisco?
I was just checking on the chat, and no one has questions. Anyone maybe, I hope that you're not shy. Anyone has questions to ask Richard before we finish this conversation? I don't know, George, Paulo. Let me see. Luis. Do you have any questions to ask Richard, especially taking into account how creative we need to be in order to overcome this situation? So Paulo is saying that it has no questions.
I just would like to make a comment. It's not quite well a question.
Go for it, Luis.
To appreciate and to thank you for the Richard presentation. I think it was so clear that probably there aren't so many questions, but I want to say that I think it's a very refreshing and different approach to the way things have been done in the past, and ourselves we are quite enthusiastic with working on a partnership, on a potential partnership, and with Sojern. I think we are on the right way.
Yep.
And to bring the vision of the data and to a more precise approach to what should be done, I think it's so important to this market that we gladly want to work this partnership with Sojern, and well, whatever we can contribute, Richard and Francisco, that make this bridge possible. Thank you so much, and we want to work that with our customers. Clever and Host systems, we have more than we have a good share of the market, so we can present this approach to several customers. And so, thank you very much, Richard and Francisco, for making this partnership possible.
Fantastic. No, I'd just like to say as well, obviously you have the link there, which, as I mentioned, I will share this with you all as well. But this link can actually allow you to access our reports directly from our corporate site. So, these aren't updated as and maybe not as granular as certainly the information I've shared with you today. But it's an additional resource, obviously, anyway, for any questions you might have from a data perspective.
Okay.
And really, thank you all again for your time, Francisco, for the invitation. Just like to quickly make a quick mention here. This actually is an image, as you can see on this slide, of my parents have a small property which they run as a bed and breakfast in the north of Portugal. Wow. So when you are all feeling brave and ready to travel, you are more than welcome and invited to come and stay here, because it's a fantastic way to get away from everything, and I think you'll certainly be very spoiled.
Where is it?
It's actually about 40 minutes north of Viseu.
Okay.
Yes, very close to, again, probably about a 15-minute drive from Castro Daire.
Okay, I know Castro Daire.
Yeah. Wow. So anyway, you're all invited. Don't all come at the same time, but it's a fantastic little getaway, and as I say, I'm sure I can negotiate some good rates for you.
Some good rates for us.
Surprise!
The property looks wonderful. I don't know when can I get an holiday, but for sure I will ask you for the contact.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep in touch.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Any last minute questions? If not, obviously you have my details there.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out.
Again, thank you so much for your for sharing all the tips, for like inspiring us with your creative tips regarding, just like I said, some ways in order to overcome this this new normal, next normal, whatever. Will you share a presentation with us in order for me then to share the presentation with all the people that registered for this presentation, or you think it's...
No, absolutely. I will send this on to you later today. So
good.
Feel free to share that.
Good. Okay.
As I say, it has some updated information as well.
Okay. Good.
And I'm sure this will probably be useful as well for your travel tech community.
Okay. So again, Richard, just like I said, muito obrigado. Thank you so much for your time. Paulo, Luís, Jorge, for you, muito obrigado. And anything you need, just stay in contact with the Portuguese Travel Tech Community. Please pay attention to the next day, since we are also working on raising the bar in what regards working as a community. So stay tuned. Richard, thank you so much, and stay safe. Okay?
You too. All the best, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.